this video, we are going to troubleshoot a few issues within the second homework assignment. So I brought up an example of a completed homework 2, and the first thing that I'm noticing when I click on each of the individual walls is that they are all separate groups, as is the slab, and the stairs are all within one group, but then when I double click to open them up, I can click on each stair, each step individually. So this is our goal. So let's take a look at the assignment in question, and we'll tackle each issue one by one. Issue 1 is that when I click on these walls, I notice that they are ungrouped, and if I triple click on them, I'm going to select the entire thing. So we want to fix that, but we're going to get to that later. First thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to make this into a group by selecting the entire thing, making sure the whole thing is selected. Go ahead and hit my G shortcut, and then right click on this and hide it, because I just want to get that out of the way for now, because the other thing I want to deal with is this stair, this step, and this mezzanine. I took the tape measure tool to measure this to see how high this wants to be, and it looks like if I hold shift down to force it along the blue axis and then touch this face, it looks like the length is 16 feet. I can see that up here if I look here. So I'm 16 feet. I want that to be 12. So what I'm going to do is, using my select tool, select both of these pieces, the flat stair and the mezzanine. Select them both, then go to the move tool, move this whole thing down along the blue axis, hold shift down until I touch anywhere along the face of this slab. So I go ahead and click once it's now sitting down at the same level as the floor. Now I'm going to just rotate a little bit, or orbit a little bit I should say, into a view where I can see kind of three sides of it. Move this now up into space by clicking once. I'm going to type in 12 feet, enter, and that's going to now reset this to the proper height. So this has now been put into the right position, which is going to give me the correct amount of stairs. I can also go ahead and use my tape measure to measure this to make sure that this is the right distance. It is 11, and it looks to me like this is a group that is closed, sitting on top of another group. That's why I'm getting that flickering. That's a good thing. So I can just, with my move tool, click on one corner and move this out into space, or into, I should say, instead of out into space, I should say into the proper place, which is exactly lining up with the top edge of this landing. Now I'm going to orbit. Notice I move a lot so that I can get into a position where I can see everything. I'm now going to move this down 8 inches. So I'm just going to type 8, enter. Then I'm going to double click using my select tool, double click on this closed group, which is right now just a flat shape. P for push pull, or I can go over here to my push pull tool, click once, move down into space. I'm now not touching the mouse. I've got my hand completely off of it. I've just clicked once to get that started. I type 8, enter. Remember, I don't have to type inches because that's a default in SketchUp. Now that I'm done with that first step, I can go ahead and click on my select tool and then click over here anywhere outside of that group. Now it's good to go. I've got my first step. I just need to make the copies. So this is the trickiest part. I've got the group selected, not open, just selected, so I can see all of my shapes perfectly clearly. I go ahead and select my move tool. I'm going to start at this top corner here along this edge, and I'm going to click once. Now I'm going to hit my option button. I'm not touching the left click anymore. I've clicked once. I'm going to move this away, and I'm going to hit option once. That's going to give me my first copy. I'm going to move this down into place to this bottom opposite corner and click again. Now let's move back by just zooming using the scroll wheel a little bit. I haven't touched anything else. I'm going to do times, and I'm just going to see how many I need. Let's do times 12 and see if that's enough. Doesn't look like it, so I'm going to do times 15, enter. Times 17, enter. So it looks like I don't need this bottom step, and notice you can keep doing times the number however many times you want. As soon as you click on another tool like select, that's going to undo that chain. So I now can't type in multiples anymore. So I'm going to go ahead and select the step that's down in the ground that I don't need and just hit my delete key. And we're good to go. So those are my steps. If I wanted to make this into one group now, I can use the select method to select them all. using a box from left to right, and I'm holding down on the left click while I do this, and then G for group, or right click and make group, and now those stairs are going to be a group. So the steps are good to go. Let's take a look at my other issue, which is this. So I just hit U for unhide all, or I can do edit, unhide all, and bring that all back. So what I've got is I've got this group where I've got two pieces that are all stuck together. I can either redraw this from scratch, or I can use what I already have in place to basically make a copy and get what it is that I need out of the existing geometry that I have. That's the option I'm going to go with. So I'm going to select this entire group. I'm going to use my move tool once it's selected to move it up into space. I'm going to click on my option key, and I'm going to move that directly up into space. So now I have two copies of it. So if I open this up by double clicking, I know I don't need this. So I can go ahead and select this and delete it. I can do the same thing in the one on the bottom. I'm just going to open that up, select that, and delete it. I want each one of these walls to be their own group so that I can individually hide them. So what I will do is I'll double click to open this group up, and I will select the two opposite walls and delete them just by selecting all of the geometry. There might be a little bit of fragments left over, so make sure that as you're doing this, you go through and delete the stuff you don't need. So now I've got one wall over here and one wall over here. Why don't I select this wall by itself, G to make it a group, select this wall by itself, G to make it a group. Now I'm going to click outside of this group. I've still got this whole thing grouped. I want these two to be independent groups of each other, so I'm going to right click and explode. And since I made those groups inside of a larger group, the subgroups stay grouped inside. So I now have two separate groups, which is what I want. Here on the bottom, I'm going to do the opposite. So in fact, why don't I move this up into space so it's even easier to see. I'm just going to hold shift down and move this up. I can always move it back down once I'm done. S for select, or go over here, double click to open it up. This time I'm going to delete the two opposite walls, the walls that are already down there. So I'm just going to select this geometry, delete it, select this, delete it. I don't want to double click on it because if I do that, I'm going to select the whole thing. So I kind of have to use my selection tool and be a little bit more thoughtful about what selections I make. So now I've got these two walls. Repeat that process. Select this, G to make it a group, select this, G to make it a group. Now go ahead and close this whole group, select that group again, and then right click and explode. And that's going to give me two separate groups because those were the subgroups within the group I had already made. Now I can select these two and using my move tool, move them down to meet up with the other walls that are in place, and then select the whole thing and move the whole thing down. And I'm going to hold shift down until I touch the floor like this, click. Now I am able to select individual walls and hide them and look inside, and I have a lot more freedom with my model. This is kind of where we wanted to end up. So hopefully this clears everything up, and at this point I would consider this assignment complete.